In recent years, China's rapid development in infrastructure has caught the world's attention. You see these sleek, modern highways, high-speed trains zipping across the country, and sprawling urban landscapes that seem to spring up overnight. Meanwhile, in the United States, we often hear about crumbling bridges, pothole-ridden roads, and delayed public projects. It's like watching two runners in a race, where one is sprinting ahead while the other is struggling to pick up the pace. But why is there such a significant gap? Let's take a closer look to understand what's really going on. Let's take a step back and look at the history. After World War II, the United States was a powerhouse in infrastructure development. A great example is the Interstate Highway System, which started in the 1950s under President Eisenhower. This massive network of roads connected cities and towns across the country, making travel and trade much easier. Imagine the freedom and opportunity this opened up for people back then. Families could take road trips across states, businesses could transport goods more efficiently, and the whole country felt more connected. For decades, this system was the envy of the world. Airports, bridges, and ports built during this period were cutting edge. Think of iconic projects like the Golden Gate Bridge or the Hoover Dam. These were marvels of engineering and symbols of American ingenuity. Meanwhile, China's infrastructure story began taking shape much later. For a long time, China's infrastructure was quite basic and lagged behind the rest of the world. But things started to change dramatically in the late 20th century, especially after the economic reforms in the 1980s initiated by Deng Xiaoping. These reforms opened China up to foreign investment and modern economic practices, sparking a period of rapid growth. In the 1990s and 2000s, China began investing heavily in infrastructure. They were building highways, bridges, and railways at an astonishing pace. One striking example is the high-speed rail network. In just a few decades, China went from having virtually no high-speed trains to boasting the largest high-speed rail network in the world. Trains like the Fuxing can travel over 300 kilometers per hour, connecting cities like Beijing and Shanghai in just a few hours. Another example is the development of entire urban landscapes. Take Shenzhen, for instance. In the 1980s, it was a small fishing village. Today, it's a sprawling metropolis with a skyline filled with skyscrapers, thanks to focused and rapid infrastructure development. So, while the US was setting the standard for infrastructure in the mid-20th century, China's rise came much later but with an incredible intensity and speed. This historical context helps us understand why China seems to be sprinting ahead while the US is trying to catch up. One major factor is the difference in government structure and policy making. In China, the centralized government has the power to make decisions quickly and efficiently. For example, if they decide to build a new high-speed rail line or a bridge, the approval process is fast, and construction can start almost immediately. This allows them to implement large-scale projects without much delay. A real-life example of this is the Beijing Daxing International Airport. From the initial planning to the grand opening, it took only 5 years. This kind of speed is possible because the central government can streamline processes and cut through red tape. On the other hand, the US has a more decentralized and democratic system. While this system has its strengths, it also means that decision-making can be slower. In the US, infrastructure projects often require approval from multiple levels of government: local, state, and federal. Each level might have different priorities and regulations, leading to lengthy debates and delays. Take the California High-Speed Rail project, for instance. Initially approved by voters in 2008, it has faced numerous hurdles, including funding issues, land acquisition problems, and political disagreements. As a result, the project has been significantly delayed, and costs have soared. This decentralized approach in the US means that getting everyone on the same page can be a challenge. While it allows for more checks and balances, it often slows down the process. In contrast, China's top-down approach, where decisions come from a central authority, enables them to move forward swiftly and efficiently. So, when we compare the two countries, China's centralized system allows for rapid implementation of projects, while the US's decentralized system, though democratic, can lead to slower progress due to its complexity and the need for broad consensus. Funding is another critical aspect when it comes to infrastructure. China is known for its heavy investment in this area. The government, along with state-owned enterprises, pours huge amounts of money into building and maintaining infrastructure. This kind of investment means projects can be planned and executed on a massive scale. For example, China's Belt and Road Initiative is a massive global infrastructure project aimed at enhancing trade routes across Asia, Europe, and Africa. The sheer scale of funding for this initiative is staggering, with estimates running into hundreds of billions of dollars. This level of investment allows China to build modern highways, railways, and ports at an unprecedented pace. In contrast, the U.S. faces significant challenges with funding infrastructure projects. The budget allocations for infrastructure often compete with other priorities like healthcare and defense, leading to underfunding. Moreover, the U.S. frequently relies on public-private partnerships to finance its projects. While these partnerships can bring in private capital and expertise, they also complicate the funding process. A real-life example of this complexity is the replacement of the Tappan Zee Bridge in New York. The new bridge, named the Governor Mario M. Cuomo Bridge, was primarily funded through a combination of federal loans, state funds, and toll revenue bonds. While it eventually got built, the project faced numerous financial hurdles and delays. This reliance on multiple sources of funding can lead to fragmented efforts and delays in project completion. Additionally, political disagreements over budget priorities can stall funding approvals, further complicating matters. So, while China's centralized funding model allows for swift and large-scale investments in infrastructure, the U.S.'s approach, involving multiple stakeholders and funding sources, often leads to a more complicated and slower process. This difference in funding strategies is a key reason why the U.S. struggles to keep pace with China in infrastructure development. The availability and cost of labor also play a significant role in infrastructure development. In China, there is a vast labor force that is relatively cheaper compared to many other countries. This abundance of affordable labor makes it easier and faster to complete large-scale projects. For example, look at the construction of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. This massive project, which includes a series of bridges and tunnels spanning 55 kilometers, was completed in about 9 years. The availability of a large, cost-effective workforce contributed significantly to this speed and efficiency. In the U.S., the situation is quite different. Labor costs are generally higher, and there are often shortages of skilled workers in construction and engineering fields. This shortage can slow down projects and drive up costs. For instance, the construction industry in the U.S. has been grappling with a shortage of skilled labor for years. This has made it challenging to keep projects on schedule and within budget. A real-life example is the construction delays faced by many major projects, such as the Seattle-Alaskan Way Viaduct Replacement Tunnel. The project took longer than expected due in part to labor shortages and the high cost of skilled labor. Moreover, in the U.S., there is a significant focus on safety and labor regulations, which, while crucial, can add more time and cost to infrastructure projects. Training programs and certifications for workers ensure safety and quality, but also mean that the pool of available skilled labor can be limited at times. So, while China benefits from a large and cost-effective workforce that can quickly mobilize for big projects, the U.S. faces challenges with higher labor costs and a shortage of skilled workers, which can lead to delays and increased expenses in infrastructure development. China has made significant strides in adopting cutting-edge technologies and innovative engineering practices. You can see this in projects like the Shanghai Tower, which is the second tallest building in the world. It's not just tall, it's an engineering marvel with its double-layered glass facade for energy efficiency and its unique twisting design to reduce wind load. Another example is the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, which includes a 6.7-kilometer underwater tunnel. The construction involved some of the most advanced engineering techniques to deal with the complex marine environment. China is also a leader in high-speed rail technology. The Beijing-Shanghai high-speed railway, for instance, covers over 1,300 kilometers in about 4.5 hours. This project involved the latest advancements in railway technology, from track design to train manufacturing. In the U.S., there is no shortage of technological capabilities. American engineers and scientists have developed some of the most sophisticated technologies in the world. However, the scale and speed of implementing these technologies can be slower due to bureaucratic and regulatory hurdles. Take the Boston Big Dig, for instance. This megaproject aimed to replace an aging elevated highway with a tunnel system through the heart of the city. While the project was completed and has significantly improved traffic flow, it faced numerous delays and cost overruns, partly due to regulatory and bureaucratic challenges. Another example is the development of high-speed rail in California. Despite the technological know-how, the project has been plagued by delays and budget issues, making it difficult to keep up with the rapid pace of infrastructure development seen in China. In summary, while China rapidly adopts and implements advanced technologies in its infrastructure projects, the U.S. often experiences slower progress due to a complex web of regulations and bureaucratic processes. This difference in the pace of technological implementation is a key factor in why American infrastructure struggles to match the speed and scale of development seen in China. Let's look at some specific examples to see how these differences play out in real life. First, we have China's high-speed rail network. It's the largest in the world and was built in a relatively short amount of time. The Beijing-Shanghai high-speed railway, for instance, was completed in just over 3 years and spans more than 1,300 kilometers. It's a marvel of modern engineering, allowing trains to travel at speeds of over 300 kilometers per hour, connecting major cities efficiently and comfortably. Contrast this with the California High-Speed Rail project. Approved by voters in 2008, this project aims to connect Los Angeles and San Francisco with a high-speed rail line. However, it has faced numerous delays and budget overruns. The initial estimated cost was around $33 billion, but as of now, the projected cost has ballooned to over $100 billion, and the completion date keeps getting pushed back. Issues like land acquisition, funding shortages, and political disagreements have all contributed to these setbacks. Another example is airport construction. Beijing Daxing International Airport, designed to handle 100 million passengers a year, was built in less than 5 years. It showcases the speed and efficiency of China's infrastructure development. Meanwhile, the renovation of New York's LaGuardia Airport, a much smaller project by comparison, has taken several years and faced significant cost overruns and delays. These case studies highlight the stark differences between the two countries. China's centralized decision-making and abundant funding allow for rapid and large-scale infrastructure development. In contrast, the U.S., with its decentralized and often fragmented approach, struggles with delays and increased costs. These real-life examples show why China has been able to build its infrastructure at such an impressive pace, while the U.S. continues to face challenges in modernizing its own. Public perception and cultural attitudes towards infrastructure projects also play a big role. In China, there's a strong emphasis on modernization and national pride. Many Chinese people view new infrastructure projects as symbols of progress and national strength. This enthusiasm for development often leads to broad public support for large-scale projects. For example, when the high-speed rail network was being built, there was a lot of excitement and pride about how it would connect cities and boost the economy. In contrast, public opinion in the U.S. is more divided. There are often concerns about environmental impacts, property rights, and government spending. For instance, when new highways or rail lines are proposed, some communities worry about the environmental footprint and potential displacement of residents. This was seen in the opposition to the Keystone XL pipeline, where environmental concerns and property rights issues led to significant public protest and legal battles. Additionally, there's a strong sense of individual property rights in the U.S. When a new project requires land, it can lead to disputes and delays as property owners negotiate or resist selling their land. This is quite different from China, where the government can more easily acquire land for public projects. Government spending is another contentious issue. Many Americans are wary of large government expenditures and are concerned about how tax dollars are used. Projects like the California High-Speed Rail have faced criticism not just for delays and cost overruns, but also for the sheer amount of public money being spent. In summary, while China's public largely embraces infrastructure projects as a source of national pride and progress, the U.S. experiences more divided opinions, with significant concerns about environmental impact, property rights, and government spending. These cultural and public perception differences further explain why infrastructure development progresses at such different rates in the two countries. In conclusion, the gap between U.S. and Chinese infrastructure is influenced by a complex interplay of historical, governmental, financial, and cultural factors. Historically, the U.S. led the way with groundbreaking projects like the Interstate Highway System, but China's recent rapid development has shifted the balance. Government structure plays a big role too. China's centralized system allows for quick decision-making and project implementation, while the U.S.'s decentralized approach often leads to lengthy debates and delays. Funding is another critical factor. China invests heavily in its infrastructure with substantial support from the government and state-owned enterprises. Meanwhile, the U.S. struggles with budget allocations and often relies on public-private partnerships, which can complicate the funding process. Labor and workforce issues also make a difference. China's vast and relatively inexpensive labor force enables quick project execution, whereas the US faces higher labor costs and shortages of skilled workers, leading to delays and increased expenses. Technological and engineering capabilities show a similar pattern. China quickly adopts and implements advanced technologies, while the US, despite having the expertise, is slowed by bureaucratic and regulatory hurdles. Public perception and cultural attitudes further influence infrastructure development. In China, there's broad public support for modernization efforts, driven by national pride. In the US, opinions are more divided, with significant concerns about environmental impact, property rights, and government spending. While the US faces significant challenges, understanding these differences can help inform future strategies to improve and modernize its infrastructure. By learning from China's rapid development and addressing the unique hurdles it faces, the US can work towards a more efficient and effective approach to infrastructure development. So, while the journey ahead is challenging, there's a lot to learn from both sides, and these insights can pave the way for better infrastructure and a brighter future.